world in depth, where we explore the most significant events that have shaped our world. In this episode of our series Top 10, we delve into the most catastrophic disasters in human history. From deadly pandemics to devastating natural events, these are the moments that altered the course of history, claiming millions of lives and leaving an indelible mark on humanity. Stay tuned as we count down the top 10 most tragic events that remind us of the fragility of life and the power of nature. Are you ready? Let's get started. 1931 China flood disaster.
The 1931 flood in China stands as one of the most tragic natural disasters in human history, leaving behind widespread destruction and an unimaginable death toll. Occurring as a series of floods that ravaged central China, this catastrophe is estimated to have claimed between 3.7 million and 4 million lives, making it one of the greatest natural calamities of the 20th century. The disaster was triggered by prolonged and intense rainfall, which caused the major rivers, such as the Yangtze and Huaihe, to overflow. The resulting floods inundated vast areas, wiping out homes, farmlands, and infrastructure. The scale of human suffering was further exacerbated by the aftermath, which included widespread famine, outbreaks of disease, and massive displacement of populations as people fled the floodwaters in search of safety. In the wake of the floods, the affected regions were left in a state of ruin. Entire communities were destroyed, and the survivors faced the daunting task of rebuilding their lives amidst the devastation. The flooding not only claimed millions of lives, but also led to long-term economic and social challenges that hindered recovery for years to come. The 1931 flood remains a sobering reminder of the devastating power of nature and the vulnerabilities of human societies in the face of such overwhelming forces. It underscores the importance of disaster preparedness, effective flood management, and the need for resilient infrastructure to mitigate the impacts of future natural disasters.
Spanish flu pandemic.
The 1918-1919 influenza pandemic, commonly referred to as the Spanish flu, was one of the deadliest pandemics in human history, resulting in an estimated 75 million deaths. This global catastrophe was triggered by an exceptionally virulent strain of the H1N1 subtype of the influenza A virus. The Spanish flu spread rapidly across the globe, infecting approximately 500 million people, which accounted for nearly one-third of the world's population at the time. The sheer scale of the pandemic's devastation is almost unimaginable, with some estimates suggesting that the death toll could have reached as high as 100 million lives worldwide. The impact of the Spanish flu far surpassed that of World War I, which had just ended, leaving an already exhausted and vulnerable global population even more susceptible to the ravages of this disease. The virus struck indiscriminately, killing young, healthy adults as well as the elderly and infants, which was unusual for influenza. Entire communities were decimated, and in some regions essential services collapsed under the weight of the pandemic, further exacerbating the crisis. The Spanish flu's effects were not just physical, but also deeply psychological and social. The fear and uncertainty it generated led to widespread panic, with many societies struggling to cope with the overwhelming loss of life. Public health systems were stretched to their limits, and in many cases, were unable to provide adequate care to the millions of people who were infected. The pandemic also had significant economic repercussions, disrupting trade, industries, and daily life on a global scale. The Spanish flu pandemic remains a stark reminder of the potential for viral diseases to cause widespread devastation. It underscores the importance of preparedness, early detection, and global cooperation in preventing and managing pandemics. The lessons learned from this tragic chapter in history continue to inform public health strategies today, as the world remains vigilant against the threat of future pandemics.
Black Death's massive toll.
The Black Death, one of the most horrifying pandemics in human history, is believed to have claimed up to 150 million lives, according to some sources. This devastating plague, which swept across Europe and the Mediterranean region in the 14th century, is estimated to have killed between 30% to 60% of Europe's population. The consequences of this epidemic were catastrophic, leading to a sharp decline in the global human population, which fell from over 450 million to less than 350 million. The sheer scale of death and destruction caused by the Black Death left an indelible mark on the 14th century world. The impact of the Black Death went far beyond the immediate loss of life. It profoundly altered the religious, social, and cultural fabric of European society. With so many lives lost, labor shortages became widespread, leading to economic shifts and changes in the feudal system. The fear and uncertainty caused by the plague also led to increased religious fervor and, at times, persecution of marginalized groups who were unfairly blamed for the spread of the disease. The cultural landscape of Europe was equally transformed, with art and literature of the time reflecting the deep sense of despair and mortality that pervaded society. The Black Death's legacy did not end with the initial outbreak. The plague sporadically returned to Europe for centuries, continuing to inflict suffering and death until the 19th century. It took Europe approximately 150 years to recover its population to pre-pandemic levels, a testament to the profound and lasting impact of the plague on the continent. The Black Death is not only a tragic chapter in human history, but also a pivotal moment that reshaped Europe in ways that are still felt today. This catastrophic event serves as a reminder of the vulnerability of human societies to pandemics and the far-reaching consequences such events can have on the world. The lessons learned from the Black Death continue to influence public health responses and the understanding of how deeply interconnected human health is with the broader social and economic systems.
Justinian Plague's vast toll.
The Justinian Plague, one of the most devastating pandemics in history, claimed the lives of around 100 million people. This catastrophic event occurred in the mid-6th century, striking the Byzantine Empire with a ferocity that left a profound impact on the course of history. It is widely believed that this pandemic was caused by an outbreak of bubonic plague, a deadly disease that spread rapidly through the densely populated areas of the empire. The capital city, Constantinople, was particularly hard hit, with historians estimating that approximately 40% of its population succumbed to the disease. At the height of the epidemic, the death toll in Constantinople alone is thought to have reached as high as 5,000 people per day, a staggering number that overwhelmed the city's resources and infrastructure. Even Emperor Justinian I, after whom the plague is named, was not spared. He contracted the disease, but remarkably survived, though the empire he ruled was left severely weakened. The plague did not confine itself to the borders of the Byzantine Empire. It spread across a vast geographic area, reaching as far as North Africa, Central Asia, and even Ireland in Europe. This was truly a global pandemic, leaving devastation in its wake on multiple continents. The worldwide impact of the Justinian Plague cannot be overstated. It is estimated that up to 100 million people perished as a result of the pandemic, making it one of the deadliest events in human history. Some historians suggest that as much as 60% of the European population may have been wiped out by the plague. The societal and economic consequences were profound, with entire communities disappearing, economies collapsing, and the course of European history being irrevocably altered. The Justinian Plague serves as a stark reminder of the vulnerability of human societies to pandemics and the devastating impact that infectious diseases can have on the world. The historical significance of this event continues to be studied, offering important lessons on the importance of public health, preparedness, and the need for swift and effective responses to such crises. The memory of those who perished in the Justinian Plague is a testament to the fragility of life in the face of such overwhelming natural forces, and it underscores the critical importance of vigilance in preventing future pandemics.
Smallpox epidemic's deadly toll.
Smallpox, one of the most devastating diseases in human history, claimed the lives of an estimated 60 million people. The smallpox epidemic is recorded in history as a catastrophic event that not only caused widespread death and suffering, but also significantly influenced the course of world events. particularly the European conquest of the Americas. The disease was so deadly and contagious that it was deliberately used as a biological weapon by European colonizers. One of the most infamous instances of this occurred near Fort Pitt in Pennsylvania, where blankets and handkerchiefs used by smallpox-infected individuals were given to Native Americans who were resisting the colonizers. This calculated act of biological warfare resulted in the decimation of entire indigenous populations, further aiding European expansion and conquest. The smallpox epidemic did not only ravage the Americas, but also had a profound impact on Europe and other parts of the world. The disease spread rapidly, leaving a trail of death and despair wherever it went. In the crowded cities of Europe, smallpox outbreaks were frequent and deadly, with the disease cutting down people of all ages, from infants to the elderly. The epidemic was responsible for the deaths of approximately 60 million people in 18th century Europe alone, a staggering toll that underscores the severity of this ancient scourge. The turning point in the battle against smallpox came with the development of vaccination, a groundbreaking invention that offered hope in the face of such overwhelming mortality. The first successful application of vaccination took place in Boston in the early 18th century, marking the beginning of a new era in medicine. The use of vaccines gradually curbed the spread of smallpox, leading to the eventual eradication of the disease in the 20th century. However, before vaccinations became widespread, smallpox was a relentless killer, capable of wiping out entire communities and altering the course of history. The legacy of smallpox serves as a stark reminder of the destructive power of infectious diseases and the importance of scientific advancement in combating such threats. The lessons learned from the smallpox epidemic have shaped modern public health strategies, emphasizing the need for vaccination, early detection, and swift response to prevent similar disasters in the future. The eradication of smallpox is one of humanity's greatest achievements, but the memory of the millions who perished before this victory should never be forgotten.
The third plague pandemic.
The 1931 flood in China was a catastrophic event that resulted in an estimated 3,700,000 deaths, making it one of the deadliest natural disasters in recorded history. This tragic series of floods occurred in central China, devastating vast regions and leading to an unimaginable loss of life. The initial estimates suggested that at least 400,000 people perished, but as more information emerged, the total death toll could have been as high as 4 million. This would make the 1931 flood not only the greatest natural disaster in human history, but also the deadliest event of the 20th century. In the aftermath of the flood, the devastation was beyond comprehension. Entire communities were swept away by the surging waters, and the survivors faced the grim reality of disease, famine, and displacement. The scale of the disaster overwhelmed any relief efforts, and the impact of the floods was felt for many years as the region struggled to recover. Adding to the list of catastrophic events, the Third Plague Pandemic, which began in China around 1850, claimed the lives of approximately 12 million people. This pandemic, the third major outbreak of the plague, spread rapidly across all inhabited continents in the second half of the 19th century. The disease, which originated in China, quickly reached India and other parts of Asia, where it wreaked havoc on the population. In India and China alone, the plague took the lives of 12 million people, leaving a lasting mark on the history of these nations. The Third Plague Pandemic is considered the largest plague pandemic in history, second only to the Plague of Justinian and the Black Death in terms of the number of lives lost. The pandemic's spread was facilitated by global trade routes and the movement of people across continents, highlighting the vulnerability of human populations to such virulent diseases. The devastation caused by the pandemic served as a stark reminder of the destructive power of infectious diseases and the importance of public health measures to prevent such widespread loss of life. These two events, the 1931 flood in China and the Third Plague Pandemic, underscore the fragility of human societies in the face of natural and biological disasters. They are a testament to the need for vigilance, preparedness, and the importance of learning from history to mitigate the impacts of future catastrophes. The memory of these tragedies should serve as a call to action, ensuring that the lessons of the past are not forgotten and that we are better equipped to handle the challenges of the future.
Typhus epidemic toll.
Typhus, a deadly disease caused by bacteria transmitted through lice, claimed over 3 million lives in Europe during the 20th century. This horrific disease, notorious for its rapid spread in overcrowded and unsanitary conditions, wreaked havoc across the continent, particularly during times of war and social upheaval. The scale of the death toll makes typhus one of the most devastating epidemics in modern European history. The most catastrophic outbreak occurred during World War I, when the disease thrived in the trenches and among displaced populations. Millions of soldiers and civilians living in squalid conditions allowed the epidemic to spread rapidly. It is estimated that during the Great War alone, typhus claimed at least 3 million lives, though the true extent may be higher due to the chaos of war, which made it nearly impossible to accurately record the epidemic's full extent. Entire communities were decimated as the disease swept through military camps, refugee populations, and impoverished areas. The tragedy of typhus was worsened by the fact that it was largely preventable. The spread of the disease was facilitated by the dire conditions of war, where millions were forced into close quarters without access to adequate hygiene. The lack of effective treatment and the inability to control the lice carrying the disease led to catastrophic loss of life. Additionally, ongoing armed conflicts overwhelmed public health systems, leaving many without the care they desperately needed. The impact of typhus did not end with World War I. The disease continued to claim lives throughout the 20th century, particularly in regions devastated by war and poverty. Even after the Second World War, typhus remained a significant threat, especially in the war-torn regions of Eastern Europe. The ongoing social and economic instability in these areas created the perfect conditions for the disease to persist, causing further suffering in a continent already scarred by decades of conflict. The legacy of typhus in Europe is a somber reminder of the importance of public health, particularly in times of crisis. The millions of lives lost to this preventable disease underscore the need for international cooperation in addressing public health emergencies, especially in conflict zones. Lessons learned from the typhus epidemics of the 20th century have informed modern strategies for controlling the spread of infectious diseases, highlighting the critical importance of hygiene, vaccination, and access to medical care. In today's world, where the threat of epidemics remains constant, the history of typhus serves as a stark warning of the devastation that can occur when public health is neglected.
Yellow River flood disaster.
The 1887 flood in China, which resulted in over 900,000 casualties, is one of the deadliest floods ever recorded in human history. The Yellow River, infamously known as China's Sorrow, has long been a source of devastation due to its propensity for catastrophic flooding. For centuries, the river has wrought havoc on the regions it traverses, largely due to the flat terrain of the vast plains it flows through. To manage the river and sustain agriculture, Chinese farmers constructed numerous dams, canals, and reservoirs along its banks to irrigate their rice fields. However, these efforts were often not enough to contain the river's unpredictable and destructive nature. In 1887, following an extended period of heavy rains and an unusual rise in sea levels, the Yellow River overflowed its banks with terrifying force. The floodwaters surged across a massive area, covering over 80,000 square kilometers and obliterating everything in their path. Entire villages were swept away, farmlands were submerged, and the lives of millions were thrown into chaos. It is estimated that this catastrophic flood claimed the lives of between 900,000 and 2 million people. The scale of the disaster was so immense that it also left an additional 2 million people homeless, creating a humanitarian crisis of unimaginable proportions. The flood not only caused a staggering loss of life, but also triggered widespread famine, disease, and social unrest in the affected regions. The displaced population struggled to find food, clean water, and shelter, as the infrastructure that once supported these communities was completely decimated. The 1887 flood serves as a grim reminder of the relentless power of nature and the vulnerability of human societies in the face of such overwhelming forces. This tragic event underscores the importance of sustainable flood management and the need for continuous investment in infrastructure that can withstand the extreme weather events that are becoming increasingly common in our changing climate. The lessons learned from the 1887 flood have influenced flood control strategies not only in China, but across the world, highlighting the critical need for preparedness and resilience in the face of natural disasters.
Deadliest earthquake in history.
The earthquake that struck Shanxi province in China on the morning of January 23, 1556, stands as the most catastrophic earthquake ever recorded in human history. This devastating event resulted in the deaths of approximately 830,000 people, making it one of the deadliest natural disasters ever documented. The earthquake's impact was felt across an expansive area, covering a staggering 840 kilometers in width, leaving a trail of destruction that would be remembered for centuries. The sheer scale of the devastation is almost unimaginable. Entire towns and villages were obliterated, with many communities losing the majority of their population. In some counties, it was reported that over 60% of the inhabitants perished, a tragic testament to the earthquake's unparalleled ferocity. The regions most severely affected were those where people lived on lowest slopes. These lowest slopes, composed of fine, wind-blown silt, are highly susceptible to erosion and collapse. When the earthquake struck, the ground gave way, causing massive landslides that buried homes and people beneath tons of earth. The inhabitants of these areas stood little chance as their homes were destroyed in an instant, leading to an incomprehensible loss of life. Additionally, many people in the region lived in caves carved into these lowest slopes. These caves, while offering protection from the elements, became death traps during the earthquake. The violent tremors caused the ceilings of these caves to collapse, crushing those inside and adding to the already staggering death toll. The combination of the earthquake's magnitude, the geological vulnerability of the region, and the construction methods of the time created a perfect storm of destruction. The aftermath of the earthquake left the region in ruins. Survivors were faced with the daunting task of rebuilding their lives amidst the rubble. The infrastructure that once supported these communities was gone, and the landscape itself had been altered beyond recognition. In the wake of such a disaster, the region's economy and social structure were shattered, leading to long-term consequences that would be felt for generations. This earthquake serves as a grim reminder of the immense power of natural forces and the vulnerability of human settlements in the face of such events. Despite the advancements in technology and engineering, the story of the Shanxi earthquake underscores the importance of preparedness and resilience in the face of natural disasters. The memory of the Shanxi earthquake endures as a poignant example of nature's capacity for destruction. It is a reminder that, while we may strive to control our environment, we must also respect the forces that can, in an instant, alter the course of history.
Cyclone disaster.
On November 12, 1970, the Ganges Delta witnessed an event that would be remembered as one of the most tragic natural disasters in human history. The cyclone Bhola struck with unimaginable force, claiming the lives of an estimated 500,000 people. This catastrophic event remains the most devastating cyclone ever recorded. The immense loss of life was primarily due to the significant rise in water levels, which nearly engulfed the majority of islands within the river delta. Entire communities were swept away, leaving behind a landscape of destruction and despair. Bhola was not just another storm. It was the seventh tropical cyclone to torment the Indian Ocean in 1970, and it was, by far, the most powerful. The ferocity of Bhola was unlike anything the region had ever experienced. Winds reaching speeds of over 115 miles per hour battered the coastline, while storm surges pushed seawater deep into the low-lying areas, drowning villages and farmland alike. Homes were obliterated, crops were destroyed, and the infrastructure that once supported thousands of lives was reduced to rubble. The aftermath of Cyclone Bhola was a humanitarian crisis of epic proportions. With so many lives lost, the survivors faced a harsh reality. The sheer scale of the devastation meant that relief efforts were overwhelmed, and many of those who had lived through the storm found themselves struggling to secure basic necessities such as food, clean water, and shelter. The disaster highlighted the vulnerability of the region to such extreme weather events and underscored the need for better preparedness and response mechanisms. In the years that followed, Cyclone Bhola became a grim reminder of the destructive power of nature and the importance of building resilient communities. The lessons learned from this disaster have influenced disaster management strategies not only in the Indian subcontinent but across the globe. Efforts have since been made to improve early warning systems, enhance infrastructure, and educate the population on the dangers posed by cyclones and other natural disasters. However, despite these efforts, the memory of Bhola lingers, a testament to the lives lost and the communities forever changed by the fury of that fateful storm. The Cyclone Bhola serves as a stark reminder of the need for continuous vigilance and adaptation in the face of an ever-changing climate, which continues to bring forth extreme weather events that threaten the lives and livelihoods of millions.
Thanks for watching. Leave a like and subscribe.